Welcome to the podcast, Working Drummer. Dynamic interviews that tell you everything you need to know about being a professional drummer and a few things you may not want to know. Produced by Mike Jackson and hosted by myself, Matthew Krause.
After Buck, I moved to Canada because I was married to a Canadian, and a Canadian that did not want to live in the U.S. Mm-hmm. That's why I moved to Canada. Okay, and I never got drafted to go to Vietnam or anything. I was classified, I forget what the classification was. So I just moved up there. By the time I left Buck in August, September of 67, we had gone to Japan earlier that year.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was that same year. I kind of had been feeling like I needed to change because other than going into the army or whatever, if that ever happened, I felt like I was 21. I needed to do something else with my life. I felt I wasn't improving as a musician. I still had interest I wanted to learn to play tabla. I wanted to learn to play hand drums, like African drums. Mm-hmm. I had an interest in Japanese music when we went there. Yeah. I used to listen to all these recordings that I could get my hands on. Mm-hmm. They were of different faraway places in the world. Yeah. I wanted to see what that music was like. Yeah. I always had an interest in that. And so fortunately, there was a clarinetist up there by the name of Henry Cuesta. I knew his family from my hometown. Okay, he was pretty well known because he had worked with Jack Teagarden, trombonist, in the 50s, and toured the world with him. And he was of the Louis Armstrong era, that style. Mm-hmm. You know who I'm talking about, Satchmo?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. That's real traditional jazz. Mm-hmm. So I met Henry, and because I knew my drum teacher and Henry, the clarinetist, were contemporaries. They'd gone to college, high school. They were like really tight. So anyway, he decided to take me under his wing. And once he found out that I was a jazz player, then he started using me on his gigs. There was this club that I used to go to all the time to hear him play and other people play in Toronto, the Golden Nugget. Mm-hmm. Not the Golden Nugget in Las Vegas. Joe Jones, who Joe Jones, not Philly Joe Jones, Papa Joe. Yeah. He was the house drummer there. Right. So I've got pictures that I took of him myself. He was playing that white Ludwig set, the white marine pearl that everybody's seen, and I was like about this close to him. I always sat at that first table there and watched him play, a side view. So he always used to play with special shoes. He always changed shoes.
Were they dancing shoes?
No, they were just regular shoes, but he had his playing shoes. Someone stole his shoes one time. He would not play until those shoes were returned. I don't remember whatever happened. But anyway, after watching him for a couple of months, Henry said, Buddy Tate, who had played in the Basie band same time as Joe Jones, is coming in from New York City. We need a drummer. Do you want to play? And Henry had already heard me play, so I said yes. So this, where's this? Oh, see this set of Gretsch right here? Can you tell right there that I'm playing with Buck Owens?
Oh, yes. Okay, I see.
It was a big 22 and large toms. So that's the same set that I used to sub for Joe Jones. I subbed for him for a week. He had to go back to New York City for some reason, and so they were happy with me. Yeah. So I backed Buddy Tate up, this wonderful old style tenor saxophone. So I was getting an education in the sense I had already played with more traditional jazz players in my hometown, but this is a whole other level. It was just piano. There was no bass, just piano, horn player, and drums.
Wow.
That's just the way the arrangement was. So that was kind of like the beginning of my jazz playing in Toronto. From there, so it got me into studying the old New Orleans drummers, like Baby Dodds, Zooty Singleton, because we did a lot. When I started working with Henry, the clarinetist, after that week, I became his drummer for about 4 years until he left to join the Lawrence Welk Band as a featured clarinetist.
Okay.
So we used to do the Benny Goodman repertoire. So I learned the Gene Krupa Sing Sing Sing.
Yeah, for sure.
That was my feature every night. I had to play the toms,
Yeah.
And so I learned pretty well a lot of the popular tunes from that era because I was playing with a clarinetist. And so I studied Baby Dodds, Zooty Singleton, Paul Barberin, another lesser-known New Orleans guy, and anyone related from that period, from the 30s on backwards to the early 1900s,
I see.
And try to incorporate that into some of the things that I did, not time-wise jazz playing, because a lot of the way those guys played was snare drum, on the snare drum.
Yeah.
That's where the jazz rhythm really comes from.
Yeah.
Ta 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 ta. That's really where it came. That was before they had a hi-hat.
Yeah.
Joe Jones was the first one to really transfer that over to the hi-hat,
Interesting, yeah.
and then to the ride cymbal.
Sure.
Kenny Clark was the one that really transferred that to the ride cymbal, and all modern drumming happened when Kenny Clark basically
I see. Interesting.
kind of invented that way of playing. Billy Higgins played very much like Kenny Clark in terms of the ride,
Okay.
That's the lineage there. And then Tony is part of that lineage because Tony played that way too. His ride playing is very much in that Kenny Clark line, if you check it out. But getting back to, I studied all of the old guys because I had a chance to use and understand where drumming had come from, jazz drumming. So this way, it made me a stronger player in this group with Henry Questa. So that was my traditional side. In the meantime, I was starting to jam with other guys in Toronto.
Okay.
They were more modern. So I got into like jam with guys that were playing Freddie Hubbard tunes or Miles Davis things or Bill Evans, So I was going in a lot of different directions jazz-wise.
Okay.
So that was when I'm going to cut that short, Toronto. So I decided to move back to the States because my marriage didn't work. So I moved to San Francisco. I had developed an interest in African drumming a few years before that. I started trying to teach myself how to play congas from records. And I knew that was a very big area for Latin music as well as jazz. So I moved there, and within a year, I started studying with this African drummer, Kwaku Dadi. And that's him in that photo up there.
I see.
And that's me. That was at the DeYoung Museum at Golden Gate Park. He did a performance there, and he asked me to do a duo with him.
Oh, nice.
So, and he played like 10, 11 drums.
Jeez.
So I had already, before going to him, I had the idea to play like a five-tone set of drums,
Yeah.
And so he was the perfect guy for me to go to. So I studied Ghanaian drumming with him, certain aspects of it. So at that same time, I had also had an interest in going beyond the normal more avant-garde jazz.
Mm-hmm.
So, and fortunately, I've got recordings that I've made that survive of that, which are not too bad to listen to. So sometimes you'll have to hear it just in duo, just drums with a cornet player.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
it's
Cool. Nice.
But so anyway, this is about, okay, that's around 72. I left Buck in late 67. So it's just very few years in between there.
Yeah.
But while I was with Buck, I was still listening to jazz.
Right.
I was still studying it.
Right.
But when I played with him, I just did the gig.
Yeah.
I didn't try to turn it into a jazz gig.
Sure, sure.
So I never stopped playing jazz. I used to jam with guys in Bakersfield. And some of the local, when I was home, I would go out and sit in and play with people that way. So kept it going.
Okay.
So I moved to San Francisco, and I started studying with Kwaku Dadi for a couple of years. And at the same time, I was living in Oakland, California, which is right next door to Berkeley, which is a hotbed for all types of music.
Yeah.
And so I started meeting musicians. And so that's how I got involved in a couple of bands that I guess you might say were in the beginnings of third world type music. You know, using a lot of instruments, percussion instruments from South America, from Africa, from India, and everybody played more than just their main instrument. And so that's where I started utilizing multiple percussion. The congas with the drum set. I had my paiste gongs, like humongous gongs. I had bells. I no longer have any of that since I came to Nashville.
Yeah.
I got rid of it. But this is kind of like my bare bones jazz set now.
Sure.
But I can show you pictures of my humongous setup. And it was, we played, all the music was basically improvised of the moment.
Wow.
So that's about as much experimentation as I ever did was during that time. I went from Buck Owens to playing traditional jazz and getting back into the more modern thing.
Yeah.
And then by the time I made it to the Bay Area, I was totally
all over.
Yeah, anything and everything, so to speak. And it was a very inspirational time musically for me, because I was finding all these musicians that were willing to try different things.
Yeah.
And so that led me to other people. It led me to playing with, have you ever heard of Art Landy, pianist?
I don't
He
think
recorded for ECM back in the mid-'70s.
Okay.
Did a couple of albums, I know.
Okay.
Which led me, through his band, led me to Mark Isham, trumpeter that nowadays does a lot of movie scores.
Wow.
But he hooked me up to all these great jazz musicians, and one of them was Peewee Ellis. You know who Peewee Ellis is?
I don't.
Okay, Peewee Ellis is, and that was at the subway station in downtown San Francisco. That photo was taken. Okay, now Peewee is the same. We're the same age. I might be maybe a few months older than him, but he's also from Texas. He's from the same town as Buck is. Sherman, Texas. Okay, but Peewee worked with James Brown.
Oh, right.
When I was with Buck, he was playing with James Brown, and he wrote "Cold Sweat" and one or two other tunes for James Brown.
Wow.
So we hooked up. I started playing in his band through this other connection, and then he started playing in my band, and then all these other great jazz players kind of came. You know, it just kind of just started happening that I was meeting all the right. Pharoah Sanders, who had worked with John Coltrane's last band. He was from the Bay Area originally.
Yeah.
I played in his band for about 2 or 3 years.
So you had a little bit of a connection.
And Eddie Henderson, this great trumpet player who had been in Herbie Hancock's sextet
Jeez.
in the early 70s,
Yeah.
was also there.
Yeah.
Hooked up with him. I'd played with him in a lot of different situations. He also played in a group that I kind of put together to play some jazz gigs. So it all kind of...
It comes together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went through that whole Bay Area period, and all the time I wanted to move to New York City. So I went, did that for a couple of years,
Mm-hmm.
decided that I was still a working drummer, and I did not want to be a starving jazz musician.
Mm.
Okay?
Yeah.
So I wasn't willing to just stick it out there and go through all that. And so I met someone from Tennessee, so that's how a singer.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I ended up moving to Nashville in the summer of '63.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and
73?
I'm sorry, no, 83.
83.
Because I already passed the 70s
That's right.
in,
Okay,
in
yeah.
California.
Okay, so 83.
Okay, 83, and so and I by that time I also had a heavy interest in Scottish pipe band drumming from people that I had met in New Jersey.
Yeah.
I had started studying with somebody there, and so came to Nashville, and actually really started, co-found the first pipe band in Nashville ever, and it's all my doing, seeking people out,
Yeah.
and started with one piper and one drummer, and that's how we started the Nashville Pipes and Drums.
What year was that?
That was, excuse me, late 60, I'm 60, I'm still stuck in the 60s, 83.
Okay.
Okay, I came here in the summer of '83. By the fall, we were already having our first pipe band rehearsal.
Nice.
Okay, that's how quickly things evolved.
Yeah.
I was on the road at that time for a couple of years. The first 2 years that I was in town, I was actually out on the road with a road band playing country. So the Scottish kind of thing came into happening, and got heavily into that. The jazz thing kind of subsided because I found out that Nashville at that time did not have the like-minded musicians that I was used to in New York City or San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to find another way to another outlet,
Sure.
a totally different outlet,
Sure.
than jazz. So I went to Scottish music because it was a totally new thing. And so through that, I corresponded with drummers in Scotland and got information that way. When I'd go to Canada to visit my daughter, I would take private lessons with some of the couple of great
Wow.
Scottish pipe band drummers from Scotland there. And so that's how I started. And I used to teach any new coming drummers into the pipe band. What I would learn, I would pass it on. So that's how I started teaching.
Okay.
That's what got through the pipe band, yeah. So I did that for 25 years, and I've been out of it, maybe 7 or 8 years now because of my hearing problem.
Okay.
I get vertigo, and so I can no longer carry a drum, on a harness and march and play because I can't walk in a straight line to begin with.
Wow.
Okay, I can function normally. I just can't march and carry a heavy drum anymore. So, but anyway, between those 25 years, I worked at the National Palace, the old one,
Yeah.
where Randy Travis got started. I started there in '89.
Okay.
I was there till they closed it in like 2005.
Wow.
I was the house drummer there.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So, I was the band leader. Was 2 weeks short of 22 years of being there. So that was my workplace. I used to take off to go play Scottish festivals and this and that. So that whole time I was at the Palace, I was involved in Scottish pipe and drumming.
So when you're teaching now, do you still teach that style?
I was teaching in the band, okay?
Yeah.
There was 2 bands. We started another band called the Tennessee Scots Pipe Band, which became rivals, okay? Because I dropped out of the Nashville band for a few years,
Okay.
and then I had someone else that was interested in starting another band, so that's why we started the Tennessee Scots, which became more successful than the Nashville band, but it's kind of back and forth. So anyway, I've had to drop out
I see.
completely,
I see.
and I stopped teaching Scottish drumming in in the band,
Okay.
in either
But
band.
with private students now, though, do you
None
teach
of them
that?
are interested in that style of drumming.
Okay.
But I still keep it alive. I have a piper that I get together with once
Okay.
a week, and we practice. But that style is very different than the American rudimental style. And the rudiments, you might find a lot of the same as American rudiments, but they're played different. The rolls are not like open doubles,
Right.
like the open rudimental style. Everything is, all the rolls are buzzed.
Okay.
Okay, and accents within the rolls is very dominant. You know, and I will give you a quick little demonstration here
Yeah, pull that.
in terms of. Can you see the pad here?
I'm going to check that out. Yeah.
Okay, the grip is slightly different for the left hand. Okay, let me raise this up so you can see a little bit of it.
Here we go. Yep, we're good.
Okay, so all the rolls are buzzed, and you use the thumb to activate the left stick.
Yeah.
See, rather than the traditional grip is the American style is this.
Yes.
Okay, where you play all your rolls opened. Well, these are just there, keeping the stick in place, and you release down here. See, the right hand, you don't use the pinky. For some reason, somebody decided the pinky does not figure in on this style of drumming. So, and it's all fingers. So notice how my fingers are moving up and down. Exactly, it's that hand motion. And studying with Chuck Brown, that's the technique that he taught, was extending and collecting the fingers.
Interesting.
See? So I'll play something. Okay. That's just like a basic march type beat.
Mm-hmm.
Notice a 5-stroke roll can be, instead of, but it can be played long or short. Or short like that, see? Or you can open it up. So you have that, you can use that within a drum score. For example, like, do you hear the long and the short?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the differences. And everything is built off of the shuffle type feel.
Oh.
More the dotted 8th, 16th, rather than the triplet feel, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But more and more, the more modern style is leaning more towards a triplet feel. See, dun 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 dun.
Mm-hmm.
And paradiddles are swung that way,
Oh, nice.
or it's supposed to. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so those are, and okay, one important thing, the drag, instead of being played in the same time as the flam,
Yeah.
okay, this is the Scottish drag. It's a dead stroke, what we call a dead stroke. So you just,
Interesting.
and
Okay.
not a lot of pressure, you just bring the stick down and keep it from, you'd be surprised, you think, well, how can you hear that? What kind of sound? On a drum, you'll still hear buzzes.
Yeah.
You'll hear buzz, buzz, which you can hear, if you listen real close, you can hear a little bit.
Yes. Yeah.
See?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not completely dead,
Yeah.
but it's a dead stroke, so
You're holding that down.
yeah.
Gotcha.
So it's one of the hardest rudiments to control. Still.
Man, unfortunately, we are out of time.
Okay.
But I'm glad we got to this because I wasn't anticipating.
And
we're
I
out
still
of
didn't
time,
tell you
but-
about Nashville.
Tell me about Nashville. But, we talk a lot about Nashville on these things. But I think we covered a lot of things that we haven't been able to discuss before in your experience with Buck.
Let me say this about Nashville, that I am a working drummer here in Nashville.
You are.
I play down on Broadway.
Yeah.
Quite often. I played Tootsie's yesterday morning.
Yeah.
Past 2 mornings I was down at Tootsie's.
Yeah.
I play Roberts Monday nights, 10 to 2. So I'm still playing country music.
Yeah.
Play jazz here at the house on Tuesdays, and anything else in between.
You're teaching.
Yeah, and I teach in Lebanon at Topper's Music,
And here
and here at home too. So
Willie, I appreciate you, man.
you're welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you so much, man. It's awesome.